Recently, I was discussing The Owl House with Vero, my fellow YouTube analyst, and he was talking quite a lot about how bad of a villain he thought Belos was. Now, I do not necessarily agree with that. I think Belos at least has the potential to be quite a menacing villain. I love how soft-spoken he is. I love that they got Matthew Rhys to voice him. He is very quiet at times, but he's prone to bursts of virulent anger. And he has the potential to be a captivating antagonist, especially with all of the hints the show has dropped about his backstory, and yet he really isn't that captivating yet. I made a whole video about a year ago talking about how much I appreciate Belos as a villain, but a lot of Vero's arguments did hold some water. For instance, Belos is not particularly threatening in the context of the show. How threatening characters are is not determined by some mechanistic, platonic measurement of how much damage they can inflict, but on how much of a real visceral risk they pose to the protagonist. The techniques that the Owl House uses to build up Belos are not dissimilar from the techniques that a show like Avatar uses to build up suspense and dread surrounding Ozai. But Ozai, despite his many shortcomings as a villain, is widely agreed on to be pretty threatening, and I agree with that assessment. Belos, however, really isn't. The threat he poses to our heroes never feels as palpable as it really should. True, they do defeat him at the end of Season 1, but that defeat is not in and of itself responsible for how limp of a threat Belos feels at this moment. Consider, for instance, how distant and removed he constantly is from the main action. True, Ozai was somewhat removed from the main action of Avatar as well. Aang does not come face to face with him in a confrontation until the very end of the show, and even then, there's no real personal drama between them. He's more furious at Aang for what Aang stands for, and vice versa, than they are furious at any personal vendettas existing between them, but there are a few differences. Number one, Avatar manages to have Ozai act vicariously through other agents that we get to know and get to understand. In Season 1, this is Zuko, who has a very fragile sense of self-worth and ties his value to his ability to capture the Avatar for his father. To him, this is the only accomplishment that will allow him to have a positive sense of who he is and what he is worth. Without that, he is merely an outcast. He ties his sense of value so profoundly to his father's view of him, and that's compelling, but also he's a dangerous threat to Aang. Even as we get to know him and understand him, he's still chasing Aang throughout the world for most of Season 1. In Season 2, he becomes a fugitive of the Fire Nation, and he loses his ship, so he doesn't really have the capacity to track Aang anymore, and he also does not quite have the same inclination. He still wants, to a certain degree, to fulfill what he believes to be his duty to his father and capture the Avatar, but he also has other wants too. He notices how brutal and violent the Fire Nation has been in a way that he really didn't before. He notices the scars it has cause to the land of the Earth Kingdom and its people, all of whom are just struggling to live normally in the wake of what happened to them. And even then, the show has another villain who takes Zuko's place as being the one to chase down Aang, and that is Azula. She is a better fighter than Zuko, and she's less conflicted. She's less torn about who she is and what she wants. And she is ruthless. She pursues perfection, power, influence. She wants control. She has always been the favored child. She's always been Ozai's true heir in a way that Zuko wasn't. She's the one who's going to take over for him now that Zuko's banished. And she is fully committed to this mission of conquest and domination. So she's a threatening villain. The Owl House doesn't really have anything comparable. Belos sometimes sends his lackeys out after Ida and Luce, but they're not particularly threatening and we don't get to know them particularly well. And even though Aang and company do not have a direct relationship with the Fire Lord, they still have a clear idea of what he stands for and what they are fighting against. There is a clear, concrete goal to stop the Fire Lord before the comet comes. And in Season 3, when it becomes clear that Ozai's mission is the complete decimation and scorching of the Earth Kingdom, the threat he poses becomes all the more tangible. But seeds of how threatening Ozai is and how necessary it is to defeat him are planted all the way back in episode 108, Avatar Roku. The Owl House doesn't really have anything similar. The show is more focused in mysteries, like the mystery about King's parentage, or the mystery of what decisions these characters will make, such as whether Luce will choose to stay on the Boiling Isles or return to Earth permanently. Belos' plan is shrouded in mystery for us, which does a lot to decrease our ability to engage with his plans, as interesting as they might be. But, as importantly, the characters don't know a lot about Belos' plans, and they're not constantly trying to stop him. That's not their major goal. That is not the process they are working towards, because they don't know enough at this juncture. Now, of course, that could change, and I look forward to that changing in the future, but the fact remains that the show is almost over. We are at just a half season left, plus a few bonus episodes, and we still don't exactly know what the Day of Unity is. We don't know how much of a threat it is to the citizens of the Boiling Isles, and there is not a concerted effort by Luce and company to try to stop him. Luce's main objective throughout Season 2A is to make it back to the human world so she can see her mom. That is her major ambition, and it's quite compelling, but it also means that one doesn't really get the sense of her being opposed to Belos. Of course, she doesn't like him, and she's fought against him in the past, but he's just an annoyance to her. She is not actively engaged in an effort to defeat him. Belos is never, I believe, going to become a threatening villain in the same way that Andreas is in Amphibia, even. Andreas is not a particularly complicated villain, even if I love his affable sociopathy. And I enjoy how viscerally he is able to stab Marcy in the back, both metaphorically and literally. And how he's just cackling as he betrays her. But he's not a particularly sophisticated villain, but I like him because Marcy has this pre-existing relationship with him, and we get to know Marcy so well, so that when he betrays Marcy, it feels like a blow against what we care about as the audience. It feels like a shot to the heart. There's not really an equivalent in the Owl House, but Belos could still be an interesting villain, even if I don't think he could ever become a threatening one at this juncture, not with how little time the show has left. And the path of Belos toward becoming an interesting villain has a lot to do with Philip Whittabane, who may or may not be Belos. I've argued that he is, but even if he isn't, he's definitely involved with that whole plot. Belos and Philip Whittabane are acquainted with each other in some way. But we don't quite know how. The show has dropped a lot of hints about Belos' past, and about Belos' relationship with Hunter and why he keeps Hunter so close. But there are still so many secrets to reveal. Now, I understand the show not wanting to reveal all its tricks at once. It's good to keep some secrets back, but nonetheless, the show has not revealed enough for us to be interested in Belos. I'm thinking of, as a parallel, the White Walkers in Game of Thrones. There's a difference between being mysterious and being so enigmatic that we're not invested in their story. If they reveal more about Belos' backstory, or if they expand his relationship with Hunter, the show could really make him a compelling figure. Ozai, to bring it back to that parallel, is not a great villain innately, but he's a great villain to Zuko. He is this oppressive, cruel father figure that Zuko needs to realize that he can't seek acceptance from anymore. Hunter's situation is a little different, but if Hunter goes through a similar crisis of faith in Belos, that could make us invested not only in Hunter, but also in Belos as a character. I want to know more about Belos, and I do not think he will be a compelling figure until more is actually revealed about him. So thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can and you want to see more videos like this. Keep watching The Owl House. I'm interested to see how the show wraps itself up. I do think that we will always have the wonderful background art of the show. I love how delightfully macabre it is. But it's dizzying that the show is wrapping up so quickly, and whether it will be able to stick the landing rests largely on how they wrap up this Belos plot. So I'm interested to see what they do. Anyway, tune in soon for my next analysis. It will be coming soon. Donate to my Patreon if you can, and you want to get access to my videos early. Adios, comrades.